Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are actually talking about the best source of intelligence to track, in this case, the Russian army's movement as it's on the border of Ukraine, and that's apparently TikTok. This is really interesting. Here's what's going on, and I think open source intelligence is overall a really interesting thing, which is what we're talking about here. And this is coming from Axios by Sarah Fisher and Zachary Basu, and I think I, hopefully pronounced their names correct, but this is actually really interesting. And it's something that we really don't consider, especially in modern warfare, because here's what's going on. Videos of Russian troops massing on Ukraine's borders are being widely disseminated on TikTok, which is basically giving the world an unprecedented view of what's happening on the ground ahead of a potential invasion by Russia of Ukraine. Now, if you think about it this way, the world has basically moved away from that top-down view in which we, the general public, learn about major military movements only through big media outlets and governments. I remember, growing up in Desert Storm and all those kinds of things, and you'd see it on the nightly news on NBC or CNN or whatever you watch, and that was essentially your entire snapshot into the news. But now we have social media. Now everybody is a citizen journalist with a camera, including troops. And this troop buildup around Ukraine is basically here for everybody to see outside of just having to go to your local nightly news source. Now, think about it this way. Videos of Russian equipment being transported to the border of Ukraine basically started surfacing on TikTok during the initial military buildup this past spring, almost a year ago, and then again late last year as Russia began to build towards its current force and posture of about 130,000 troops on the Ukrainian border. Now, Russian military and open source intelligence experts, people like Michael Kaufman of CNA and Robert Lee of King's College, have compiled things like Twitter threads with hundreds of crowdsourced videos of military equipment and units that are moving basically towards the Ukraine border. Many of these are outsourced from everyday Russian citizens posting on TikTok, on Telegram, on Twitter, and other platforms about the unusual sight of tanks rolling through their local stretch of the highway. So, you're sitting in St. Petersburg and a column of Russian tanks is heading south towards Ukraine. You whip out your phone, you put it on TikTok, and you say, look at our military heading south. Now we start to understand concentrations, directions, and troop strengths by virtue of all of these people. As that tank column is identified from St. Petersburg as it goes all the way down towards Ukraine and all that. And as people are taking basically TikToks, videos, all this kind of stuff, now we can start to track that, especially if we can see markings, let's say on tanks and vehicles that identify them uniquely, meaning if each tank had a serial number or something like that, and the way a lot of airplanes have a tail number that makes it unique to them, now you can start to see tank XYZ moving down Russia towards Ukraine. That is really interesting. And the latest news out of this is that Russia's defense military posted videos overnight from some of their forces that were beginning to actually withdraw or pull back from Ukraine's border. But obviously, experts are cautioning that Moscow still has a major capacity to launch a large invasion, and maybe they're faking us out. Who knows? Now, here's why this matters, because open source intelligence, specifically the community around it, has evolved from a niche corner of the internet to basically a major player here now with one of the biggest stories currently on the planet, is often preempted government warnings about military movement by Russia and other things as well. And that, I think, is a really interesting and solid point that we have to talk about, because, think about it. The Russian military is attempting to coordinate things and say, yes, we're going to post, tomorrow, on what our strategy is. And here everybody's saying, well, no, we already see you moving on TikTok, and what you just said, tomorrow doesn't jive with what we can actually see with all the video that's being taken. The investigative journalism group Bellingcat, for example, has won awards for its open source reporting on the Russian military's covert activities, including the downing of a passenger plane in eastern Ukraine in 2014. If you remember that, it was eventually understood that a passenger plane was shot down by a Russian missile. The assumption is that the Russians thought they were shooting at a Ukrainian military aircraft, and here we are. And this isn't the first time, for the record, that social media has been used to shed light on a conflict from the ground. It was a huge presence in the Arab Spring in the early 2010s when we saw a whole bunch of countries in the Middle East essentially go through attempted democratic revolutions. Since then, obviously, we're all rocking a lot more iPhones and Androids out there, and we have significantly increased our presence and our video uploads, and now TikTok is making it even easier for users to upload video faster to the internet, which is why the intelligence agencies are looking at the TikToks of the world, as well as Twitter, etc., to get this information before a government makes an official statement on exactly what they're doing, in this case, Russia. And TikTok, for the records, their specific algorithms also amplify user-generated content over professional content, which is also helping make these things go viral. So one person posts, here's a column of tanks heading south in St. Petersburg, and everybody, all of his or her followers, latches on, starts sharing, retweeting, or re-TikToking, or whatever that works. I don't use TikTok. And now you've got something going viral because the algorithms are picking this up and then starting to amplify it to other people that might be interested in that specific thing. Now, while social media, like I said, can be helpful for foreign policy, national security, and open source intelligence, it also brings new risks, especially to nations that are doing military actions. Russia, I'm looking at you. Last year, for example, misinformation about clashes between Palestinians and Israelis basically exploded online. Images, videos were taken out of context. I remember doing a video/podcast on that one. That was a huge thing. Also, Ukrainian officials have warned that Russia's military movements and all the attention they're receiving may actually be feeding a narrative about the looming invasion in order to destabilize the country of Ukraine and cause a panic within its population. We've also seen all of the accusations from Ukraine about crippling cyber attacks that have been hitting there. Russia has obviously denied this, but we also know that Russia is very good when it comes to cyber attacks. And think about it this way. While the preparations for a possible land war are now playing out in further public view, just basically fuller public view rather than ever before, one of the most potent tools that we have in geopolitical conflicts are those cyber attacks, because it's adding a new dimension that's more secretive than ever. We saw a dry run of this by Russia in Ukraine in 2014 when Russian hackers basically hit a nuclear power plant in Ukraine, shutting it down, essentially causing about 80,000 people or so in that geographical area to have the lights turned out. And they also happened to run a denial of service attack simultaneously against the phone system in that geographical region. And now you've got Warfare 101. They made an entire region deaf and blind. And if you can do that to an enemy, basically just before an invasion, they are going to be disorganized. They're going to be uncoordinated. They're not going to be able to essentially have the response, a rather effective response that they should have. And so we're going to start seeing, if the lights start going out in Russia due to cyber attacks, that it basically means we are imminent for an invasion, and those tanks that came from St. Petersburg or wherever are going to roll right into Kyiv. And I think that is something that we are all just, on edge for right now. And even though we've seen some of these things, basically videos of Russian troops pulling back, we'll see if that actually is going to happen. And so that is your news of the day. Open source intelligence for the win here. We know ahead of time what Russia's doing before Russia even tells the world. And quite frankly, that in modern warfare is a really good thing. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.